Hi, YouTube. All right, let's start off. We are going to talk about GitHub Copilot and how you can use it with PowerShell. I think everyone has heard about GitHub Copilot at this point, but not a lot of the focus what you can do with PowerShell. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll introduce myself real quickly. My name is Barbara Forbes, and I am the Azure Technical Lead at OGD in the Netherlands. And you can find me on the socials, and the reason the screen was just black is because I forgot to fill this in, so that's why it's a bit messy. But BA4BES is my GitHub handle, as well as my Twitter handle or X handle or whatever. And I've been using LinkedIn a lot more, so you can find me on LinkedIn, BA Forbes, and you can follow me there as well. All right, let's go. First, we're going to thank our sponsors. You have all seen them. Did you get all the thingies they have? Did anyone get the rubber duckies? Yeah. After the session, go get the rubber duckies. They're awesome. Do visit them. They make events like this possible. So they're nice people. Go talk to them. Let's talk Copilot. We need to go back in history a little bit, back into 2022, when the first Copilot actually went live. When we could still say Copilot and not define what the Copilot was for, because we didn't have like 50 of them. We had one Copilot. It was GitHub Copilot. It was the first one to be general available and to be usable for everyone. It launched in 2022 as an extension which you could use in Visual Studio Code. And in 2023, Copilot Chat was added to that. So in Visual Studio Code, it could not only predict the code you were going to write, but it would also be able to ask questions. So what are we talking about when we have GitHub Copilot? So this is a bit of a trip down memory lane because these are the sheets that I used back then when it was first introduced. And Copilot was your friendly AI pair programmer. So the goal of it was that you would write a line and it would try to predict what code you were going to write. And it was a bit bumpy on the PowerShell side. And the reason for that is that there is a lot of very bad PowerShell in the universe. A lot of people write PowerShell that don't really know how it works, and PowerShell is very tolerant of that. It will work very quickly, even if it's not that pretty. Good to know that this is what happens when you're using Copilot. So you are all the way on the right, writing your thingies, and you get a connection with the GitHub Copilot service, which is the AI model that tries to predict what you are trying to write. The model was trained with all the public code that you can find on GitHub. So it uses everything that's written on GitHub. And that's the reason why it could be a bit wonky with PowerShell. Sometimes still is, because you can do a PowerShell file and write C# in it. And a lot of it will work. Won't exactly be PowerShell. So sometimes that happens. So what I want to do is just check how it's working now. Where we have come. Later on, by the way, we are going to take a look at the new Copilot Workspace as well, because that is still in a private preview, so that's fun to see. But now let's see what that Copilot can do for us at this point. Demo time. How awesome is this picture? Love this one. I drew it myself, of course. All right, so I opened up a code space here. So it's a Visual Studio Code environment, and I have the Copilot extension and PowerShell extension. That's pretty much all I have running here. And it immediately asks me, I am going to check, this is still pretty small. Go bigger, go bigger. Yeah, you're not going to zoom on me when I'm full screen? There we go. It's such a tiny screen. Is it visible like this? Yeah, we're not going to see, the lines aren't going to be too long. There's a screen over there as well for the people in the back. So it immediately tells me, hey, you have Copilot, ask us a question, ask us to do something. I know little tricks. It's really like Clippy is there saying, you need help. So, all right, we can do that. And usually I would say I'll start a function writing it myself. But now let's ask Copilot. So I press Ctrl-I. And I want to create a function here that will count all the files in the directory, just because it's pretty simple to see what it would do. So I ask Copilot, create a function that will count all the files in a directory. Keep it pretty vague. Just see what happens. I'm a user. I don't know what I'm doing. So I put a functional question in there. And it's actually doing this pretty well. And this is the fun thing with demoing Copilot. It's doing so much better than I did when I first tried this one. So let's see what it already has. I'll accept it just for the readability. If it's not what I wanted, I can still tell it change something. But I'll accept it so that we can actually see it. And it starts with count files, which is almost good. It uses an unapproved verb, but all right. Well, get away. Then it gives command binding. It gives a parameter for the path. It validates the path, like there. Not completely in the correct way, I think, but anyway, we'll do it. And then it tries to get all the files, which get child item. It uses recurse, so it gets everything that's in there. And it creates a variable for the count, and it writes an output. And it even put it in a try-catch loop. So my job is pretty easy by this point. All right, this is fine. Now let's say I want to change some stuff. I still get this thing here with code actions. And this one is going to actually act on what is wrong here. It's saying I have an issue. Okay, I can ask for documentation, but then I have to do stuff myself. I won't do that. I said, fix this. Tell me what the problem is. And it says you should use a verb that is approved, such as get. And I'll go down and get file count. Exact same script. Change that, and I can say, okay, sounds good. I'll accept that. Now I don't have any errors. But I want to improve this even more. I mean, this thing goes by recurse on its own. I want to be able to say, no, I want to make a parameter. Decide if I actually want to use recurse files. So what I can do is say I have a Copilot menu here. I can say I want to start Copilot. And I can say here, make recurse, make a switch parameter called recurse that will check for recursive files when used. It's a bit wonky. I'm checking if it will actually understand what I'm saying here. So I added a parameter here. And it's right. We could do it like that. I would rather have an if-else loop because I don't think this will actually work. But I am already impressed that it put the recurse in there. So I can accept that, or I can just say, okay, you almost got it right, I can make changes. I can do anything like that. And now let's say for the path, this is fun. I want the default parameter. So, or a default value for that parameter. So I say, make the function default to the current path. This is very functional, so I'm very curious if it will understand this. Yeah, there it goes. Use the default path. So I don't have to think about syntax or anything. And I do always have to check stuff. But it really gives me a base where I say, this is what I want to have. What can you do for me? And this is a function I can now run if I want to. But let's go a little bit further because, let's be honest, this is the fun part. This thing is taking away the things we love to do. We want to create this on our own because this function is somewhere on the internet already, but we are all doing it ourselves because that's more fun. So now let's consider the things that aren't that much fun, like writing correct comments in there so that everyone knows what's actually happening, and writing the comment help at the top for the documentation because that's what you're supposed to do. But come on, we want to move on and make more code. So I check Copilot again and I see generate docs. And I use that. And it actually understands what the comment help is. It knows how documentation is supposed to be used in PowerShell. And it creates the synopsis here and the description. And it's hard to read because the screen is so small. But it already tells what it's supposed to do, the path, what is defined, if not provided, what is used. It creates the complete comment help for me, and I don't have to do that. No input, what the output would be, and I just have to take credit for it, which is awesome. Let's face it, I didn't write a single piece of code. I'm like, yeah, I did this. I was awesome. So this saves me a lot of time. We all know this information, but it got that from the script. So that's awesome to use it that way. And what we can even do, so when we're like this, we could even have a little button here. I select the function again, and I say generate tests. And I will admit the thing doesn't understand Pester. Whoa. Okay, I do need to zoom out a little bit for this one. Oh, it actually got Pester here. Wow. Didn't do that when I tried it at home. This is the fun with demoing Copilot. This is how you get chaos. Rob would love this. Ben as well. So let's create a little file for this. Test.tests.ps1. And let's see what it came up with. You can still read this, right? So it retrieves the count of files in the current directory. When a valid path is provided, it checks if it still works. When it's not provided, this is actually pretty good. I have no doubt this is, it doesn't mock in this case. So if it works, let's find out. I didn't install Pester in here. That's a shame. That's a bad demo. But I think Pester is never supposed to work on the first try anyway. Or is that just me writing really, really bad tests? Yeah, just me? Anyway, but it is also already impressive that it not only wrote the test, but even if it's wrong, this gives me some leeway to know what I could test for. I really like this kind of functionality in there. Now let's take this a bit further. So we'll go back to tests. Get rid of this one. So we added some functionality in here. We said, hey, you want to do it that way. We let it fix our issues. And we can keep going here. And one thing that we can also do, this is also fun. It now describes what action I want to do after this. So I said, hey, maybe this is the time where you want to call a function. So we also still have the in the console where it just suggests stuff that might make sense. And if I tap complete this saying, oh, this sounds like a good idea, it provides it for me. Sometimes it's very fun to check what it will actually do. And it shows how you can do everything. And I have actually used this before to create sort of documentation on people who are teaching PowerShell. I'm teaching it, I take a command and it goes through all the scenarios which you can use. It can be really an inspiration like that. And of course, that's always the message with Copilot. You are still responsible. You are still the pilot. All right, let's do it all. So let's see if we can come up with something else. So I'm going to create the function. And I'm going to say invoke rickroll and see what it comes up with. Now, this would be fun. The thing is, I already know this doesn't work in code spaces. I'm using a code space. It's Linux that can understand this one. So I need something else. And it already says that I can accept it or can check all the other things. So I'll press Control and Enter. And I get a pane here with all the other suggestions that it has found. And here it started the process for me. I like it, by the way, that it wrote documentation for this, for call the function to rickroll the user. Another one with the URL. Another one with the URL. They are very popular. Here it added the file count. It's getting a bit confused. Let's see if we can get something different. Now with this, I wouldn't actually need a URL. So if I accept this, and I call this should actually work. And now I can say invoke rickroll. And you can consider yourself rickrolled. by Copilot.
There's an understanding narrator. There's an understanding narrator, so it actually will read.
Ooh, we need that as well. What I actually love, though, of course, it only does this at home and not here. What I actually love is when I started the info Rickroll and I just said, right, I have output never gonna give you up. It will complete it. It knows the lyrics. This thing knows what's important. And that's one of the magical things where it actually saves you a lot of typing, even if you feel like I want to write my own code. Because I can understand that feeling. This thing can write everything for us, but we have the feeling, yeah, but that's our fun. We want to write our own code or know what we're doing. But if you create an if loop or something, so maybe we take the file count we just used. I was hoping it would autofill because I didn't know how what it called the get file count. So I add this and then I say if, and that's the thing, it will already fill up. This was actually my idea. If the file count, I think 100 is a little bit big, greater than 5. But what I could do, even if it didn't write that, and I got to this, so I went like, there's more than X amount of files in the directory, it will finish these else loops for me. And this is just saving me time typing stuff. I'm still writing my own code. It's saving me the time. Now, what I actually want to do, the thing is, this demo, I did this 2 or 3 years ago. We're getting old, people. I did this when it was still in preview. And I want to show you, I took a bit of the movie for that, I made a movie of the demo then, because these demos tend to fill. And I made this back then. And you can see how it worked then, and see how far we've come, because you seem to forget. So then I would write function, and the first 2 suggestions were wrong. Third one was right, something we could do. This, completely wrong. Nothing we could do with this. And fun thing is I made the movie to be able to talk around it. So there's some timing issues here. I sped it up a little bit. I still had to tell it a lot. This was already very impressive in that time, that it would create the mandatory and the parameters. I didn't have to think about the syntax. And this is how far we have come. I mean, it was able to do this. It got a long way, but I really had to steer it where I wanted it. And now I can just say, I want a function that does this, and it gets a long way on that. I think it's so impressive where it got in this time, when you remember that this was just 3 years ago. Still did the same thing, but I had to do a lot more work, and it was able to create comments. Another thing that I've noticed, even if you want to think of your own code, is with the chat option and the Copilot Chat being available, this also means that you don't have to move to your browser. Because you have to check, oh, how were you doing that one thing again, and go to the browser and hope that you get the right resource. You can get that straight from Visual Studio Code. And that sounds silly, but it saves so much time to be able to do that. Because next to everything we have done around here, we also have the Copilot Chat. And I can just ask anything here. I can ask about my code. I can say fix problems in the code, so it knows about the context. But I can also ask anything about saying, how do I make a parameter mandatory in PowerShell? And I can ask it questions. I can also use it sort of like I would use Google, but it will tell me, hey, if you want to do this, this is your way to doing it. So this also saves me a lot of time. I never have to leave my session. Stay in focus really helps. Rip. All right. So that is what the regular Copilot, the official GitHub Copilot, can do for you. And us Dutchies would say, kost dat, which basically means how reasonably is this priced, but then with caps. So what do we have to pay for this stuff? Do we get it for free? No, we don't get it for free. Copilot does cost us money. And they are making new new offers right now. Copilot is still $10 a month or 100 a year, which it was when it started. So this is for personal use, if you add it to your personal account. There is a very tiny line down there. Yeah, I think no one here can actually see it. I can see it. And it says free for verified student, teachers, and maintainers of popular open source projects. So you are able to ask if you have an open source thing that's really big. You can ask, hey, can I use Copilot for that? That's what GitHub does when they want to support open source maintainers. If you're a student, you can also ask if you can use Copilot for free and then completely get used to it. And then you have to buy it when you're done studying because you never want to live without it. That's how it works. €10 a month or $10 a month sounds like a lot, but yeah, it also saves a lot of time. Now, if your company wants to use the business part, they can use that on the team side and they can pay $19. And the newest one that has been recently available is Copilot Enterprise. And there you have all the controls that an enterprise might need. So you have the controls on how you can customize it, how you can use it in your developer workflow. And, for example, what repositories are allowed to be used and which aren't. So yeah, you do have to pay for this stuff. But yeah, in my opinion, it really works and really saves a lot of time. And it makes coding fun. I really love using it as an extra option. All right, Copilot Chat, we're done. Let's move to Copilot Workspace. Back to this year. So Copilot Workspace has been announced. I think they did a teaser at Universe, and it is now in a private preview. So you can join a waiting list and get access to it. What does Workspace do? Well, we all saw in the keynote what I did. I needed to change something. This is great. The photographers are fighting each other. Should I stand all dramatic? I'm now ruining both their photos. Oh, I'm never going to get invited back. So Copilot Workspace takes care of the complete process. So everything that you're doing within a repository, it can do for you. And I'm going to show you how that looks. Am I going to show you? Oh, I'm going to show you this very fancy picture. And then I'm going to show you. So I'm going to have an example repository here. And actually I took a function. So I have an Azure function, which was a demo, which I have ignored for quite some time. And when I open it in the portal, it now says, this version is way out of date. It has been deprecated since 2022. Do you know how many years that is in IT years? I should be ashamed of myself. So this is the point where I'm like, okay, we need to update this. So I go to the repository and I've already made an issue. So the code is right here for this function. And I've made an issue here. The function needs to be updated to 4x runtime. And I responded to myself saying, what a good idea. And added that the PowerShell modules should be updated as well because they were very old, the AZ modules. And what I have here is a little button. It says open in Workspace. I'll do that. And I get it saying it is in preview and I get a new window. So the issue is here. And the first thing it does is create a specification. What exactly is the issue? So they define the current situation and the proposed situation. First, has this function application been updated? No, at this point, it is using 2.1 in host.json file. It found this all by itself, the description I gave it, that's all the information it had. And it said, hey, the PowerShell modules are defined here and they're not the latest version. And what we would want is that the function application has been updated to use 4.x and the PowerShell modules have been using the latest versions. This is kind of cute. These are not the latest versions. So I'm able to change this, which I will forgive Copilot because it shows how old this function is. Because I think Azure Accounts is now at version 3 and storage is at 7. It's been a while. So I can change things, saying, no, you got it wrong. I can also add stuff. I could add stuff, for example, I can change the documentation to reflect my changes. It will also collect that itself, saying, hey, you need to change documentation. Really cool. And then I say, yeah, this is functionally, if this is done, then my change is done. I generate a plan. And it says what it will do. It will change these 2 files, saying the version will be updated to 4.0. The extension bundle will be updated. I'm not actually sure if that's necessary, but fine. And for the requirements, the module version will be changed for AZ accounts and AZ storage. Okay. So I can add files. I can change stuff in here, say, no, you got it wrong, or you were so close, but it tells me what it's going to do. And then I say, okay, fine, implement it, go. There's a reason I took those JSONs, by the way, because we can do this in PowerShell, but it takes longer, so the demo gets more boring. So here we can see the changes it made, and this is actually very quick. So it tells me it's going to change the version from 2 to 4, and it's changing the PowerShell modules from 3 to 7. So I can say, check the code here. I can check if I want to do something with it. If I'm not happy with it, I can open it. I can open a terminal. I can open a code space to see if I'm happy with what it did. Remember, code spaces are available for everyone, so I can use them. Or I can say, this looks good. Create a pull request for this one. It even creates a complete pull request for me. I don't have to do anything. So I say, update runtime modules, and updated the functions, and the description is right here. Looks good. Create a pull request here. So it's now going to create that pull request, so I can ask for a review if I want to. Of course, you always have to review because it's AI and you are still responsible. But it changes everything that it's done here. And we have something nice here. It says, for more details, open the Copilot Workspace session. So anyone else can actually check this. So someone's going to do a review. They didn't create this workspace session, but they get a read-only version of it. So they can see exactly, this was the issue, this is the goal, these are the changes, the things we wanted to change, and these are the changes made. Everything in the process is visible for anyone who does that pull request. And then in the end, it has no conflicts. I can merge it from here. And I can do that here. Checked everything, and now it's connected right here. And changes have been made. So I was really impressed with, especially if it doesn't write the code, because I will admit, with PowerShell, didn't get the correct code at the right first time, most of the time. And it sometimes made kind of a mess, but I was already pretty happy with that it made a plan for me. It made my job already easier because I was playing around with a module that I have also shamefully neglected, the PSConfEU module, where I actually have an issue open where I haven't found the time to do something with it. And this thing created a plan that the code wasn't correct, but inspired me. I was like, okay, this code isn't correct, but I can change this code. And that really helped me to get my flow going. So as an inspiration on its own, the fact that it can create a plan out of something a human generated, really helpful. I was really impressed how well it worked for that. So Copilot Workspace, there's a waiting list and you can join it with the link or the QR code. And you can join it and get free access at this point. It will at some point probably be something that will be paid like Copilot is. But I would always say enjoy it as long as you can. I think they are still adding people to the waitlist. And what GitHub usually does is they go in batches. So at some point, a lot of accounts get some access. I'm not sure at what stage they are with this one. But they are actively still adding people to the preview. So we got Copilot Workspace, and now I was interested, what's going to happen in 2025? What are we going to do? So I made Copilot guess. And I have it bigger because this is a really long story. And Copilot says, I can't find anything on it. And I said, imagine it. And this is what it came up with. GitHub Copilot Nexus. Designed to connect developers across the globe in real time. pair program with AI or human partners, regardless of location, language, or time zone. So the concept apparently is that you could have a shared coding environment where everything is translated. So even if if coders have a different language, they can talk to each other, and then put AI right in the middle for some pair programming and to offer some solutions and to make this all in one big global happy family. So I'm going to take this and pass this on to GitHub and say, hey, this is what you're doing next, just so you know. And this is why we have Copilot for everything. So that's what we look out for, but now we can still have our focus on the workspace, which I think is still very impressive. So I'm exactly at the mark, I think. So we can open the floor up for some Q&A. And I do want to know if anyone has questions, because I'm very curious. Yeah.
One concern that I have is when I studied Copilot, at some point it's going to leak some of my programming into Copilot.
The big angry universe. I'll repeat the question. So the question is, if you have your code on GitHub, even in private repositories, at what point might it be available to someone in the world? And this is a very legit question. So the code that's been used for the training is only public repositories. Whatever is in private repositories can never get into Copilot. The thing that it will do is it will take some information on the repository you're working in, even if it's private, because it uses it to give you answers. But it won't use it to train the model. It is good to remember that some of this stuff is stored on servers. And for you personally, you don't have to worry about that. For your company, might have to consider this. But for you personally, I wouldn't worry about it. They're not going to use it to train something else. I have tried a bit to break it, to get it to give me passwords or API keys, but I haven't been successful yet. So, yeah.
Maybe you can fill in on that one, because I have the same question to my account manager. And they told us that the information is sandbox and it will not leave the company. At least it's
Yeah. No, for what you say, I'll repeat it all for the YouTube. Maybe I should that microphone out there. But for enterprise, things are always different. So for enterprise, then it won't leave that sandbox. But in your personal account, still it won't be used for training data.
The one thing that confuses me a little bit about enterprise is, so now we're talking about Copilot and Visual Studio Code, right? But if I have Copilot and enterprise, I've got all over the place, don't I?
You got one? No, that's a different Copilot. Yeah, the Copilot is one big family. Everything we've talked about is GitHub Copilot. And you're talking about Copilot for Microsoft 365. And that's a completely different one, and it's a different license. So, and there's like 15 others of them, and I'm not exaggerating. You know what I love the most? That they actually called one of them just Copilot. The one you get in Edge, that's called Copilot. Every time I talk to a customer, I have to ask them which Copilot they mean. And they say Copilot, and I say, you don't mean Copilot. We can add more confusion to this. I have full faith we will. But it's good questions. It's always the question, what happens to the data that's fed into AI? Anyone else with something? Yeah?
not sure if you know the tool, but what's the big difference between, for example, Codium and this?
The question is, what's the difference with Codium and this one? I'm not familiar with Codium, so I can't ask that one. Okay, then I'm going to grab the microphone.
Codium and you specialize in mismatch.
Codium also works with...
but the company specialize in mismatch.
Okay.
And Copilot, you can see I'm not sure about the capability of Copilot when it comes to designing the unit test, but Codium really specialized for it. I tried it before. Yeah.
See, this is for me to get my steps. Look how long they took. Anyone else?
What's the
what's the context in which Copilot works? So can it generate, for example, what's the context, the data context in which Copilot works? If I would, for example, want to have a list of all the functions of my PowerShell module that spreads over a couple of hundred functions, does that work somehow? Can I somehow inject my code in Copilot actively to extend the context?
It will understand if it's all close together in one repository. So it has the repository's context.
It doesn't work. If I ask for a list of functions, it says, sorry, I can't help.
Oh, I want to see that one.
Okay.
You have it all in one
Later.
repository? Oh, we're going to check it in a second. Because that's actually, this makes making a demo on this stuff really difficult, because you saw how quickly it created that function. That's because I had tried it already. And it remembered. Somehow I must have committed it somewhere. And it was like, oh yeah, we already know about this one. Here, this is what you wanted. That's what I want you to do all the way at the end. And that was why the demo is so quick. So it does see the context of the repository. And you can see that with the Rickroll function, where it would say, hey, do you want to count files?
Can we make the context somehow visible? Can we ask Copilot, show me the context? Show me what you know?
I would like to try that.
Great question for the recording.
I did. Can everyone confirm that I was repeating everything until Rob came in? You know what I did, Rob? You know what I did? I let Copilot rickroll the whole room. So, yeah.
Yeah, one note to this, in Copilot Chat, you see the context. So it's above the text, you see what exactly is the context. And to do it so that Copilot can see all of your repository, you have typed something like at Workspace, I think, and then your question is related to your code base, and it's searching for itself for the relevant information.
Ah, cool. Cool. All right. Anyone else? My story was so clear. How much time do I have, Rob? You would never shout at me. So, should we try to see... Oh, that was in case it didn't work. Should we try to see what it does, the Workspace thing with PowerShell? See how far we can get in 7 minutes. So I did have the PS SandGrid one. Did I save it? Of course I didn't. That's disappointing, isn't it?
No.
That's cool. It put it to PC screen only. Like, I don't want to talk to you people anymore. This is actually the one I created for the demo, for the keynote. So I have PS SandGrid. Basically what this does is it sends emails, and it uses PS SandGrid. So it was meant to replace send mail message. And I made a feature if the parameter Rob is used, the text in the body of the email should be purple, because Rob's world is purple. So there should be a parameter for that. And I see I already merged it. I'm going to see if it will still fall for this. I'm going to see if it actually is like, okay, this didn't happen yet. This might be very confusing for it. Yeah, it's like this already works. But can we see where it all goes? It checks that the email turns purple. It checks that the functionality is in the PSM file. But it also checks the documentation. And it checks that there's a description there. And I could probably see the merge message still, because that will save us the time waiting for it to actually do it. So this is the pull request I used. And I can see still see the session, so I can see everything that happened there. So I had the specification here, boop, where it said, no, it didn't happen yet. It does not include that functionality, and it should, and it's not addressed in the documentation anywhere. And I made the plan where I said, actually, I changed this when I created it, because it said something like Rob purple thingy as a parameter. So I said, no, just Rob, that's fine. We don't need to know what it actually does. We can understand when it says Rob. check if it's used, include an example in the documentation, add it to the test. The tests are not actually working. So this is just me saying, these tests don't work at all. They're still in the testing phase, but they're like, yeah, sure, write it into the text. See what happens. And then it started changing those files for me. And it created the parameter. Can I make this big? Yeah. So it created the parameter for me with the description. Don't have any lines here. That's a shame. It added the parameter here, which, oh no, that's the example still. The examples. Here it added the switch parameter. And here it said apply Rob parameter if used. Can I scroll at all? Ah, this works. So here it said if Rob is present, and if it is HTML, then add it, and if it's not HTML, pretty much do the same thing. But then change the mail body type. So this is not really necessary that it does both of them, but it did understand, for example, it understood that I can send mails both with HTML and without. So it made that distinguish itself. Like I said, I YOLO'd it. I didn't change anything on this. Because what could possibly go wrong? But it did check this on its own. It added it should be purple, then the mail value, and this should be sent. So I was very impressed with how far it got. Of course, I needed to change something, but this is a very big function, and it understood exactly what part was doing what in it. So it changed that. It also changed the documentation, which is a bit silly because this is auto-generated from the description, but sure. It added it here, and it added even stuff to the tests which the tests don't work, they now completely don't work. So, yeah, I still have a lot of work to do, but these are things with such a big function where I would be like, okay, can we make this stuff? Can we make this work? Where do I start? And this really helped me. And this is, of course, not the official one, because I was being very unprofessional here, just for you, for the keynote. But this does show what it is able to do. And now I have 2 minutes and then Rob will start shouting and no one wants that. So I think we'll finish it here. So thank you all for being here. And I had fun. I hope you too.